Good evening and welcome to another edition of Ziggy's World. Tonight I'm going to be talking to Jules, and we'll be talking about the Eljamel scandal. So good evening, Jules.
Hi, good evening, Mark.
We have an exclusive. Tonight, Jules will be giving us some information that's never been made public before. So this on my show will be the first time that this will be made public. So, Jules, do you want to take over from now?
Sure, yes. So I'll just start from February 2020, Mark. So Liz Smith, who, as I'm sure lots of people know, Liz has been a great supporter of ours fighting our cause for the public inquiry. So Liz asked the FMQ for if we could get the care and support needed for in the First Minister question. So Nicola Sturgeon agreed with that. So fast forward again another 10 months, December 2020, myself and Pat Kelly, who is another lead campaigner, we secured a meeting with Jean Freeman and Liz as well. So obviously we had this on Zoom due to COVID, and we explained our situation with Jean, that there was lots of significant concerns and outstanding questions that we had required answering, and around the healthcare, the lack of clinical governance in our healthcare system in Scotland. So Jean was brilliant. She listened to us, and she said, right, you have suffered long enough. We're going to go away and get you the answers to the questions. So a few months later, it was March 2021, we reconvened with Jean, and not such a great meeting. Jean said, I've met with GMC, I've spoke to HSE, they're all washing their hands off it. They're saying it's not their domain, that it's nothing to do with them. They're not responsible, and kind of felt, utterly dismayed during this meeting. So I kind of thought this was my one and only chance. And I politely said to Jean, with all due respect, you're not telling us anything that we haven't already, that we don't already know. That the answers that Jean was getting is Pat and I had already received these answers, because we'd already written to all these government bodies. So fair play to Jean. She said, right, I'm going to go and commission an independent review based on you and Pat Kelly's care and experience under NHS Tayside. So that's what Jean did. And fast forward, so it took, another year, a year and a bit actually. May 2022, there was a document issued from the Scottish Government, and it was an independent review. Two neurosurgeons, one was appointed to review my care, and one for Pat's. Now it's a joint document, and this document that I'm going to share with you tonight, Mark, is two extracts from it. And Pat Kelly totally, because it's a joint document, he's absolutely okay with it. So we received this, but before I come to read out the part, Mark, we then had a meeting with Humza Yousaf when he was Health Secretary at the time. So that meeting was in June 2022, and we felt it was quite a productive meeting. Liz Smith had mentioned that this report that we received, it was extremely damning. It highlighted the significant failures and lack of clinical governance within NHS Tayside based on our care and experience. And Humza asked me to take it off the table. So I agreed at that moment in time, and Humza suggested that we go and meet with NHS Tayside as part of what was described in the review, that we met with Tayside and to basically chat things through. It also suggested that I was due an apology based on what had happened and what had not had happened around Eljamel and the supervision. So fast forward again, Pat and I met with Liz Smith and the board, chief exec, medical director, the chair to the board of NHS Tayside in October 2022. Now, during that meeting, very pleasant, we felt we got our point across. They listened to us, and Grant Archibald, who was the CEO at the time, did say, can you give us one more chance? And I wasn't keen to do that. So they went out the room, and myself and Liz and Pat chatted, and Liz suggested, look, we need to give them one more chance, and if we don't get the answers to your questions, we start calling for a public inquiry. So when we reconvened back in the meeting, I explained that, that I had questions that were still remain unanswered from this independent review, as did Pat Kelly. So we were told, right, okay, give us 2 weeks. So after a week, I received, well, Pat and I, but I'm speaking for myself, I received an apology from Lorna Burr-Stewart, who is the chair of NHS Tayside, and it was a very paternalistic apology. Now, this apology described they were sorry that it was how I was feeling. And I rejected that apology, as did Pat. I put back in writing, extracting about 10 points from our clinical review of the failures of NHS Tayside, and politely asked, can you please answer these, how you can say it's based on how I am feeling. Now, fast forward, to this day, I never got a reply. Now, fast forward another week, and we were waiting for the answers to our questions. Now, one of the questions, the significant questions, and this is important, Mark, because one of the significant questions I had was based on the lack of supervision around Eljamel in 2013, based on my care I was operated on in August 2013 and December 2013. And I had a document from Philip McLaughlin, who was the medical director at the time, had sent this letter to Eljamel and David Mole, basically sending them away themselves to decide between what the level of supervision would be. And you can imagine when I read that document. So I was like, I had a grip. I took the bull by the horns. I wanted to get to the bottom of this supervision concern. So that was my question, one of my questions to NHS Tayside. So after that week, I got my email back from Tayside, and it referred me back to, I was to then request for an internal review with NHS Tayside. They weren't going to give me the answer. So frustration kicked in, and I knew they were just trying to kick the can down the road. They were trying to grind me down. They were hoping that Pat and I were going to disappear. So that's when we launched. That's when I started the intense campaigning for a public inquiry. But I just want to, and Pat and I to this day have never shared the contents of that review. Now, what I will say though, Mark, is the contents of that review is no different to the clinical due diligence review that Pamela Johnson issued last September 2023, that the government claim that was the catalyst, that they decided there was, Tayside were concealing things, that they were now going to grant the public inquiry. And I've went on record with this because what's included in that review, the findings and the failures of NHS Tayside and the lack of clinical governance and the management system failures, is no different. Our review is no different to what Pamela Johnson's. The only thing that was different is that they admitted that Eljamel had lack of supervision, and they had failed 108 patients that had received care from Eljamel between June 2013 and December 2013. So I'm just going to read out, this is 2 extracts from our review. It's a lengthy document, but I felt it was important to share this with you on your show, Mark, because you've been a great supporter of ours through campaigning, and just for the public to understand exactly the journey that myself and Pat have been on, because as we know, there is now going to be clinical reviews for every patient that requires it. And our grave concern is we hope that they're not going to be up against what we've endured. So I'll just start reading it out, Mark.
This is the part that's never been been made public before.
No, this has never been shared in the public domain whatsoever. So one of the points, and this is quite lengthy, so please excuse me. NHS Tayside should ensure that Mr. Kelly and Ms. Rose are receiving the appropriate professional care and support to consider ways in which the significant distress associated with their experiences of being treated by Professor Eljamel can be addressed. It should be recognised that this may need to be supported by an appropriately skilled clinician who understands and is able to assist them in making sense of the links between their physical health, experiences of prior aspects of their care by Professor Eljamel, and their beliefs about the causal and contributory factors to their experiences. This should include consideration of any interventions with the potential to consider workable and effective ways of minimising the ongoing negative and distressing impact of their experiences. Now, that's just one point, so I'll just move on to the second point. NHS Tayside should recognise that it is only through respectful, personalised and ongoing dialogue with Mr Kelly and Ms Rose that some of the unresolved and significant questions can be addressed in ways that help with the process of making sense of personally traumatic experiences. Now, I just want to fast forward, Mark. So after we had our meeting with Tayside and I then launched publicly for a public inquiry. So I had 2 protests, one in November and one in December. Now, I have a private Facebook, my own Facebook page group, my Facebook, and I posted the paternalistic apology from NHS Tayside, but I made that public. Now, I gained a lot of support. There was a lot of anger from Joe Public about reading this apology. They were quite right to express what they felt about it. And one of my comments was, I feel like I've been urinated on by NHS Tayside. So what I didn't know then, now if everybody can bear in mind what I just read out about respectful, personalised and ongoing dialogue with Ms Rose. So what I didn't know then, and I only found out December 2023, was at that time, Tayside tried to penalise me and shut me down because they did not like it that I was exposing them for what they were with this apology. And through a subject access review that I asked and I just received in December, just there, I received an email from NHS Tayside wrote to HUMSA to say that they found me aggressive and that I was making vulgar comments in the media, and they no longer wish to communicate with me or correspond with me, but they were happy to do so with any other patient. Now, I will give HUMSA his due. He was straight back within 2 days and said, absolutely not. Ms Rose has the right to express her level of care that she has experienced, and I suggest that you continue with dialogue with Ms Rose, and in fact, have you considered mediation? So I didn't know that at this time, obviously, and out of the blue, I received an email then in December 2023, basically from Tayside asking, we're willing to chat to you again, and they suggested mediation. So the mediation started in January 2023, and I'm now still currently in mediation, 15 months later. And it is my opinion, and this is my opinion only, that even I cannot fault my mediator, but I even think my mediator has been frustrated at the lack of progress that I've been endured with NHS Tayside. So bearing in mind these two points that are in our review, Mark, Tayside are just thrown it out the window. It's the tail wagging the dog. They haven't gave a jot to what was commissioned in this review that was suggested. And I feel it's important. Everybody knows what we've endured, the process and the problems and the prevarication and the delaying and the stalling, trying to get the public inquiry. But I think it's important that we now expose Tayside for the journey that Pat and I have had to endure to date.
Yeah, it's the usual trick of, well, if we paint a picture of this person as a troublemaker and as someone who's just trying to have a go at us and just trying to is being rude and all sorts. It's a way of shutting down any kind of debate or any kind of dialogue. It's been happening for quite a while in Scotland with politicians from the SNP Greens and from people from Tayside Hospital. It's just the same pattern that we've seen before, Jules.
Can I just say, Mark, it is worth mentioning that Humzan, I'll give him his due, he actually said that he had not viewed or witnessed any form of me being abusive or aggressive.
No.
Or in any, and Tayside's words were vulgar comments. He had not witnessed that because there isn't.
No, and that's been shown throughout your campaign. So what we'll do now, thanks for that, Jules, and that's valuable information that's not been made public before. So thank you for that. And what we'll do now, we'll have a couple of second break, and then we'll get into more about the Eljamel scandal, and we'll look back at how things have developed and where we're at now. So 2 seconds, and we'll be back. Welcome back. Now then, we'll get into the main part of the topic. Keep discussing the Eljamel scandal. But what we're going to do is we'll go through some points throughout the time that you've been campaigning, and then we'll have a discussion about these important topics. Bit of history: the Eljamel scandal. Butcher Eljamel worked at Tyneside Hospital from 1995 to 2014. It's 19 years. He was first. The issue came to light around about 2011. Was the first police complaint. He was suspended in 2013. We have so far 174 patients. Is that still correct, Jules?
Yes.
We have it's over 2,000 days since the first lodged the complaint. Now, what's your feelings about this, Jules? About what you've gone through since then?
What about waiting for the Police Scotland, or just everything?
We'll start off with the first complaint was apparently 2011, and he was suspended in 2013. So it took 2 years to suspend him. Yeah. Why was that?
Well, Mark, you see, I've got a difference of opinion because I actually have patients who have complained well before 2011. So that's not entirely true what Tayside are claiming, that they received the first complaint. So but however, what I have to say is because Eljamel was the head of neurosurgery, he was able to answer these complaints. So whether he was concealing them, whether the board were turning a blind eye and letting Eljamel continue doing what he was doing because, you know, it was convenient for them. He was bringing in the revenue through all these prototypes that he was carrying out. And, you know, and it's been rumoured that the experiments that he was experimenting on people, on patients. So that's not entirely correct, that the first complaint was 2011.
So that's Tyneside. That's when they say that they first got a complaint.
Yes.
But it still took them 2 years to suspend it, even though there was a complaint about him. Was he still? So he obviously was still operating on people after the complaint was made, because because your operation was what, 2013, was it?
Well, Mark, I was the last patient he operated on. They suspended him the next day.
He was suspended the very next day after
Yes.
after your operation. So we've got. So let's move it on a little bit to your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you first start getting contacts from different people that have been harmed by this butcher? When did your campaign start?
Sure.
Really getting some traction.
So if I can rewind back, Pat was the first one that thought, wait a minute, there's something not right here. Pat first called for a public inquiry with Shona Robson in 2015, and needless to say, you'll not be surprised, she just poo-pooed them.
Yeah.
Now, Pat also lodged a complaint, phoned the police and explained to them, I have these concerns, I would like you to investigate. And Police Scotland came back and said, well, and charge him for what? And Pat said, well, you're the law, you tell me. So Pat's been squirreling away in the background for a significant number of years before I started intensely campaigning. But Pat and I have always remained in touch since 2015. And, we were always, not a day goes by without Pat and I either we speak on the phone or there's WhatsApp messages being exchanged. So we've been working on it in the background for a good number of years, up until the point where we managed to get the meeting with Jean Freeman. So, sorry, I'm just hearing crackling there, sorry. So then Pat has his own open Facebook group and seeking answers from NHS Tayside. So there was a few patients on there that were just following Pat, and Pat would post, when we had media information. And I remember our first protest, I went to Parliament and it was November 23, and I had just over a dozen patient names. And probably we had about 15 15 protesters turn up at that time. And then when I launched another protest outside Ninewells in December 2023, there was more patients coming forward, and it literally just...
Were they contacting you direct, or?
So it was a mixture, Mark. Yeah, it was a mixture. They were seeing things on the media. They would be writing to Liz Smith. Liz Smith would put them on to me. They would private message me on Messenger. I spent many a night going through Pat's Facebook for patients that had left comments. If they were saying I've been harmed, I would then contact them and explain what I was about, what I was doing, what we were now campaigning for. So word just got out. So it was a mixture of, the way that patients came forward. But what I think it's important to highlight, Mark, is every single patient that I spoke to said, I thought I was only one, Jules. I thought I was the only one that was unlucky. I just thought it was, these things happened and it was just purely bad luck on my behalf.
What was the media reaction in the early days?
Do you know what? I can only say I have had extremely positive reactions and experiences with the media. They have been absolutely amazing.
I mean, in the very early days.
I contacted every media source that I could. I started on Twitter, as you know, and I just used to trawl through Twitter. I would, not stalk the journalists, but I was doing my homework in the background just to make sure I saturated every single journalist that I could. That, I went knocking on doors, I would send emails, I would send messages. Yeah, granted, not everybody would reply to me, but, slowly but surely, I've had the faithfuls from the very beginning, BBC, STV, Courier. Justin's been amazing, that, supported us from day one with this. And then, of course, the media hype just grew and grew.
Early doors, when you first started contacting politicians, opposition politicians, from the government, Scottish government politicians. How many? I know Liz Smith was huge in the early days, from the very beginning of when you contacted her, to getting involved in this and doing whatever she can. How many other politicians were the same? How many would you say
So
got back to you? And
I don't have numbers, but what if I can just quickly say, so our strategy was we knew we weren't going to get heard ourselves. We needed to get the politicians on board. So every single patient that I spoke to, you know, once they'd shared their harrowing experience with me, you know, I asked them where they live, and going on in the background in my head, I'm thinking, right, who's their MSP? And you know, I then gently coaxed them and urged them to write to their MSP. So through another patient, I had a meeting with a patient, and Willie Rennie. He was one of the first to come on board with Liz. And then it was Michael Mara. Pat messaged Michael on a Saturday night. I always remember this. And within half an hour, Pat messaged me, went, he's got back to me already. So Willie Rennie, Liz Smith and Michael Mara were from day one. Not so great experience. Another patient contacted Graham Day. She met with Graham Day, give him his due. He met with her, gave her his time. But Graham Day's opinion was, well, let me know what answers you need, and you know, write down the questions, and I'll go and speak to Tayside, and I'll get the answers for you. You know, and this patient come back to me, and I'm just sitting shaking my head when she's telling me this on the phone, and I'm thinking, he will get nowhere. But, you know, I had to let the patient, it was her journey. I had to let the patient do it her way. And I knew fine well Graham Day would get nothing. And he come back, you know, no, Tayside just shut the door on him. And then eventually, as the pressure grew, Graham Day then changed his tune, and it was like the one size fits all generic letter that the SNP MSPs were sending out to their constituents. So fast forward, you know, Shona Robson was contacted by a good few patients that were in her constituency. One patient is registered blind. I remember him phoning me saying, Jules, I've got this reply back from her, but she's not even willing to meet me. She's just sent me back this box standard letter. And I says, well, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'd actually sat in a meeting, on a phone call meeting with Shona Robson and another patient, you know, but that's not right. You know, that's not right. So in the beginning, we just had a small, you know, it was a faithful Liz Smith, Michael Mara, Willie Rennie. And it was aimed for a good few months. I did send out loads of emails to the opposition, to SNP MSPs, didn't get anything back whatsoever.
No. So fast forward a little bit, your campaign starting to get a bit more traction. You are getting a lot more attention on social media, and then we had Humza stating we won't be having a public inquiry. He tells everybody, as first minister, he becomes first minister. He was health minister at the time, wasn't he, during this scandal? And now as first minister, he's declared, because I remember him doing this, he's declared there's not going to be a public inquiry. Tayside will deal with this. And then your campaign kicks up again, and you go to, was it the conference, the SNP conference?
Teresa.
Teresa goes to, you go to the conference. Teresa very bravely stood up, and I don't like to use the word heckle, but that's, you know, she shouted down the first minister. And the first minister comes off stage. He tries to usher her into a room where the press isn't. Teresa very bravely wasn't having it. She wanted to speak in front of the press. And then Humza declares that they're going to have a discussion about setting up a public inquiry. He's starting to change his mind. How did you think that went? Because it seemed to me on the outside that took it, that day, and the press coverage from that took it to a different level altogether of interest from the press and from a different. We saw a different side of the Scottish government starting to take it seriously now because of the press that was going. Could that have did you see that happening from that day? Did you get what, did you think, well, this, are we going to get this kind of reaction? Because it seemed to me it took it to a different level.
Yeah, if I can I just say about Theresa, when Theresa come on board, she approached me as a harm patient and chatting as we do. And Theresa mentioned that she, at that time, Mark, I think it's worth noting that, or mentioning that Theresa was an SNP member.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
Theresa won't mind me saying.
Yes.
So Theresa won't mind me saying. Yeah, and she won't mind me saying, because we've now had this conversation. But Theresa, when Theresa spoke to me and I explained to her, again, Theresa thought she was the only one, or not the only one, but she felt she was in isolation. She didn't realise the gravity. I can't remember how many patients there were at that moment in time when I spoke to Theresa, but I think she said to me, "Oh my goodness me, I did not realise, how serious this scandal is." So Theresa's words to me were, "Jules, I'm a member of the SNP. Do you want me to have a word, see if they can support us?" And I just sat there again on the phone and I'm shaking my head, and I said, and I was polite to Theresa, and I said, "Theresa, thank you so much for your suggestion, but we've tried, I've tried all the SNP MSPs. I really don't think it's going to help. It's not going to wash." So she accepted that. And then I can't remember how long after that, and Theresa messaged me one day and she says, we've got the conference coming up. What about if I go in and heckle? And I know you don't like using the word heckle, but that's Theresa's words.
Yeah.
And I thought, brilliant. And I said, "But Theresa, we need to keep this QT between ourselves." So we did. But I did say to Theresa, what I need you to do is send me a text message detailing that you, Theresa Mallet, this is what you're going to attend the conference, and this is what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. So she did. And of course, I then just lined up all the media. And Theresa, she's been branded super gran, and she really is a super gran. She was amazing. She was I couldn't join her that day, even outside. I had an engagement that day, but she's messaging me every step of the way, saying, "Right, I'm in." Oh, they've approached me. They've said, Humza wants to meet me. And I'm like, "Right, okay, right." And she's like, "I'm sitting down." I'm like, "In the front row." And and then she messaged me afterwards and told me exactly what she did. And I have the utmost respect for Theresa. And I agree with you, Mark. I think did it take it to another level? I don't know if it did at that stage, but it certainly let the Scottish government know that, we're not going away. We're not giving up.
No, what I think it did, it certainly got more of the national press involved in this, in my opinion. I don't know if that's how you see it. I think national and press starting to, because of that, because the press was there as well, and because Humza didn't just batter off as someone who's just heckling him. He actually came down off the stage and spoke to her. I think the press, in my opinion, I may be wrong, but in my opinion, the press then started thinking, "Hey, what's going on here? If he's coming off the stage to speak to a one-on-one, this must be something that's very, very serious." And I think from then the press did seem to be more interested in what was going on. And I do think politicians, in my eyes, and from what I say, it's just my opinion, I do think more of the opposition politicians started to pay attention.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Started to realise this is very serious,
Yes.
and it does need talked about, because it kept on being brought up in Parliament, and Humza were kept on getting questions and questions and questions about this. When he actually declared that we're going to have a public inquiry, were you informed first before he declared it, or did he just declare it? And did you know about it before he declared that we're going to have
Yeah.
one?
So there was a few things, if I can just wind back, Mark. So
Yeah.
I was keen to get some SNP MSPs on board, and I described it as a chink in the armour. I needed to get, some MSPs of Humza's party to listen to us and support us. And to cut a very long story short, Jim Fairley agreed to meet me. And, Jim and I have since spoken. He said, he felt, this is going to be a frosty meeting. And I knew I had 1 hour with Jim to sell my story, not my personal story, but to sell the campaign, why we were doing what we were doing and the reasons behind it. And it was a very productive meeting. I gave it my all with Jim, very pleasant. And Jim said to me, Jules, I'm going to go away and do, due diligence. I can't say to you right now if I am going to support you. I need to do my homework. He says, but I will, whatever I decide, I will get back to you, personally. And I said, thank you. And it was just before I did my 5th protest that I got an email from Jim saying he's going to support the public inquiry. And I think, as well as with Theresa, with the protest, with Theresa heckling, I got Jim on board to support, the public inquiry. I really thought, right, we're beginning to make headway now, but we don't stop. And my words to the group were, right, well, first of all, you need to all thank Jim. Please, it's only polite we write and thank Jim, which they did. But secondly, please go back to your SNP MSP, because a few patients had wrote to all theirs, and they'd, the Jenny Gilruth had passed the buck, just sent the box standards, letter, the one size fits all letter. I said, you need to go back and explain, that what's happening now. So the patients started to do that, but then we had the protest the next week, and I invited all the MSPs along, and Jim come along, and it was quite emotional actually. And I don't really get emotional, but it was emotional with Jim there, because I just felt we'd made headway, and I knew that the patients all respected Jim being there. So then I think it was that night after the protest, I got a phone call from one of the press saying, Jules, there's rumblings that you're going to get your public inquiry. And I hadn't checked my email at that time, but unknown to me, I'd received an email inviting me to go in for a meeting with Neil Matheson. And I'm saying to I'll not say who, but the girl at the media, I'm like, I don't believe that. That's rubbish, and no, I'm not buying that. And that was naive of me, because obviously now, knowing how the system works, I think there was a significant. But do you know what? I got the day off work, and I went through the next day, had the meeting. There was 2 other patients that attended on Zoom. I wanted to go in person. And so then Michael Matheson told us the next day. What I can say, Mark, of course, I was delighted and pleasantly surprised. But as lead campaigner and patient rep, I kept banging on to the patients. We're in this for the long haul. It's going to take us 2-3 years to keep campaigning. I was in it for the long haul. I was prepared to go and continue campaigning till we got that public inquiry. But I got it quicker than what I anticipated. So yeah, I'm happy.
So Humza declares we're going to have a public inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to announce a chair, and they're going to announce somebody to do the one-to-one reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And then we wait and wait and wait. And how many days was it? Over 170 odd days?
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Well,
Do you know?
over 170 odd days.
Mhm,
We waited and
mhm,
waited and waited. And you still carried on, as you said, the campaigning. You still
mhm.
kept on pushing.
Absolutely.
Why do you think you had to wait that long just to get a chair named?
Do you know? I really don't know, Mark. I think that's one that only the Michael Mathesons, the Humza Yousaf, the Neil Grays can answer. You know, I really don't know.
Do you think they were stalling because they
Oh,
hoped that it would be they could keep it going and going and going and going and going and draw it out and draw it out and hope that the public lose interest in this? Do you think that was part of the reason?
I think that's maybe. I think that's maybe one reason that can be considered, Mark. But I tell you what, if they did hope that, it was extremely folly of them, because if
Because
they had,
there was talk about Jason Leach being involved. Now, a little bit of information that he's actually, I'm not sure if the word's employed but he has contacts with Tayside.
no, he's on their payroll.
He's on their pay, so he is employed by Tayside Hospital.
Hmm.
Do you think that was Humza trying to stack it in their favour by having him involved in some way?
Well, do you know, I've thought about this, Mark, and I think it's 50-50. It could either be yes, or could it be they're just so not in tune that Michael Matheson didn't even know that Jason Leach was on Tayside's payroll? Because and I've wrote down here, can I just share this with you? So
Yes, of course.
in our meeting when Michael Matheson, told us, right, we're going to do the public inquiry and we're also going to do the one-to-one clinical reviews. So great, I got 2 for 1. Now, Michael Matheson, his words were, Craig White, Professor Craig White, is one of the civil servants that he was involved in conducting the review of Pat Kelly and I. So Craig's been involved it from a significant number of years as well. So Michael Matheson said, Craig, through our National Clinical Director, Professor Jason Leach, are looking to make sure that we have a robust process in place. Now, that was Michael Matheson's words in that meeting. Now, at that time, myself and the 2 other patients, 3 patients, I'm not forgetting good old Teresa Supergran, we thanked Michael Matheson and thought, right, okay, and my last words to Craig was, I want consulted in this, Craig, about these clinical one-to-one reviews. As patient rep, I really want to know exactly how you're going to execute these, how you're going to, I'm the only one that holds 184 patient names. So Craig and I, exchanged pleasantries and then said goodbye. And then the bombshell hit about Jason Leach, as I'm sure in the media, about him being on NHS Tayside payroll. So how on earth can he or could he be involved in anything to do with, 1, the public inquiry, or 2, the independent clinical reviews? It is complete unconscious bias, and absolutely not.
So we then have the health secretary who's involved in this, Matheson, who's helping to deal with this, and then we get his scandal where with his tablet, we all know the backstory to that, and then he leaves, he resigns. You must have thought, a new health secretary means a new process, means longer. Did you think, oh, this is never ending? Are they going to get is he then going to say, well, I need time to go all, or is that, did you have, when he took over as health secretary, was did you get a meeting straight away?
No, I wrote to him that night requesting a meeting, and but I tell you what, Mark, that was our 5th health secretary since we've been campaigning for a public inquiry. And I know people say, oh, well, you know, he needs to have his honeymoon period and get embedded into the system. I maybe sound ruthless, but that was not a concern of mine. He took up that post. I just expected business continues as usual, as normal. There was no way, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of all the patients, we were not prepared to let this rest. It was not our concern that Matheson resigned and Neil Gray come in. No, we were still going ahead. We were campaigning, you know, fiercely. We weren't letting up. That was not our concern, and neither should it have been.
So
for
then
else's misdemeanors, absolutely not.
So then we you keep the pressure up, and you keep campaigning, and you keep, and the voices are getting louder and louder, and the opposition are getting louder and louder, and the pressure starts to mount on Humza to name a chair and name an independent, you know, a person to do the one-on-one reviews. And then we get the announcement that I'll just have to read this. We get an announcement that Lord Weir is going to be the judge, the serving judge, who's a serving judge on the Supreme Court in Scotland. He will be leading the inquiry, and we get Professor Stephen Wigmore, head of Department of University of Edinburgh, as the doing the review, one-on-one reviews. From what I gather, these two have got excellent CVs. What's your opinion on these two? Are you happy with these two being heading this up?
Yes, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the patients. That's up to the patients, you know, to do their own homework on these two professionals. But yeah, I am happy, and you know, as I say, I'll work with anybody. You know, I'm open for the communication and to assist and support. Absolutely. You know, I'm just delighted that we've got the chairs, and I've heard nothing but positive, constructive comments about the two guys, and yeah, I'm happy.
You're happy with that?
Yep, I'm happy.
I'll finish this segment, but before I do, I want to ask you one more question, and it's on the personal side. What kind of toll has this journey has taken on you and others within your campaign? You know, what kind of toll is it taken?
Well, being honest, Mark, to say that it's not taking any toll would be disingenuous of me. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard. You know, I work full time. This is a part-time unpaid job. But, you know, as a medical professional explained to me, you know, she said, Jules, your type of personality, because you're still going through trauma, this is my way of dealing with it, Mark. You know, so I've not addressed my trauma yet. I've not begun to heal. And so that's the reason why I fiercely...
At the end of this process, sorry, Jules, but at the end of this process, do you think it's then when the inquiry's finished, when your review's been finished, and any kind of judgments being made, do you think then it's, wow, I've got to deal with this on a personal level, and I've got to start to heal myself?
Yeah, Absolutely. I mean, as I was told by the professional, Jules, you can't begin to get therapy because you're still in the eye of the storm. You're still experiencing this trauma as 173 other patients. So I'm lucky, and I think what drives me, Mark, is I consider myself lucky because I am speaking to these patients that are on a cocktail of medicine, cocktail of drugs, painkillers, morphine daily. They're housebound, they can't get out. I'm a lover of the outdoors. I can go out for a run. I can go and climb a mountain. I can go on a long distance walk. Most of these other patients can't. I consider myself lucky. Yes, I suffer, CPTSD, but these other patients are suffering physically and mentally. And I think that's what drives me, that I just want to get the redress and care and support for them. So, I have we're a very, very close, tight knit group of patients. And, within that group, there is a good few patients that, I would say are now close friends. And I have my go-tos, as we all do. Pat Kelly and I, God, we turn the air blue when Pat and I chat, as with Alan. So, I do have my support, as with the other patients. You all find your own wee network for support. And, I've got a good, strong support network out with the campaign, with my own family and a few close friends. Yeah. But I won't deny, Mark, there has been numerous times there's been tears.
It's been a
Yeah,
long journey.
yeah.
So
There's-
I've heard on the grapevine that you're going to be writing a book about this.
Yeah, so I've actually started after we were granted the public inquiry. I thought, right, okay, naively, I thought, right, my job's done. I can take a step back. And I'd been thinking about it for a while, to share my experience. And so I started writing a book. I've started, and I'm going to do two actually. One from the journey to get to the public inquiry, and the second book will be from the 7th of September onwards, when the public inquiry was announced, and through the actual process. So, but it's been on the back foot for the last month, because obviously I arranged the next protest. So yeah, hopefully I'll get back onto that.
Do you think writing this book will also help you deal with what's happened?
Absolutely. I've spoke to a few authors, just to correspond with them, and to pick their brains on. I've never wrote a book before. I've no idea. I've never done a public inquiry before. I've never campaigned before. I'd never done a protest before. So I'm all for learning. So yeah, I think it will be therapeutic for me to do this.
Well, after this small break, we're going to then go into the quick fire round, where I'll be asking you 3 questions, and then we'll go from there. So one second. Welcome back, and this is the quick fire round. So I've got 3 questions, Jules. I have to take my glasses off for this one.
I'm more nervous about this than standing
3
protest
questions.
outside Parliament, Mark.
You don't know what they are, because I
Don't.
don't tell the guests.
No.
I want your first thing that comes to mind when I ask. First question. Do you think at the end of this, you're going to get the justice for the 174 patients?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. If I've anything to do with it, yes. I mean, I'm under no illusion, Mark, that just because we've got granted the public inquiry, just because we've got our 2 chairs and the one-to-one clinical reviews, I only see this as 50% of the process. We've still got a long road to go yet. Yes, I'm quietly confident.
Second question. Do you think the inquiry will be held this year?
Well, that's a very good one. If I was to bet money on it, no.
No.
I think I did speak to somebody about it, and I think my comments were, I'm thinking perhaps this time next year. But I hope I'm wrong. I'll be pleasantly surprised to be proved wrong, but I don't think it will be this year.
And the third question, and the most important question, will I get a mention in your book?
Oh, of course you will. Yourself and the other and the other tweeters on X, like your Winstons and your secret squirrels, everybody, yeah, you'll all get a mention, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, can I just say, Mark, the support I've received from X has been absolutely amazing. And as you know, not many people will know, I cold called you, I sent you a pleading text message on X, just asking you if you could share my posts, and it's just snowballed from there. So, all thanks to you and all the other tweeters that retweet for me, and the secret squirrels and the Winstons that won't come forward.
I think the thanks needs to be to you and your team, because this inquiry will hopefully mean that nobody else and nobody's other families will go through what you've gone through, and hopefully something will happen from this inquiry. So that's the main discussion for tonight. I want to thank Jules for taking the time out to come and speak to us tonight, and for the new information as well.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. After this short break, I'll be ending the program, and we'll with a Ziggy's rant. So we'll be back in 2 seconds. Welcome back, and this is Ziggy's rant. My rant tonight is going to be about what we've just been speaking about. My rant is why it has to take so long for this to happen, for a public inquiry to happen. Why it's taken so long for politicians to act instead of getting involved straight away and wanting to get to the bottom of what is something extremely serious, one of the biggest scandals I think we've seen, not just in Scotland, but the UK, because it's 174 patients that we know of.
Yeah.
So why is it taken so long for this to happen? Why does it take a campaign, the media, and I'll say a few politicians at the beginning, the likes of Liz Smith and the others, you know who you are, who got on board straight away. Why is it taken over 10 years for others to get involved and the Scottish government to do their job? Why is it taken so long? And now we get the politicians jumping on board, like the Greens, like Maggie Chapman, jumping on board. Oh, I've helped. I've done my bit. Where they've not. They just jump. We see it time and time again, where we see with politicians that just jump on board at the very end because they want to get their name mentioned, because it's become a big thing. Why can't they do it straight away, look at it and say, yes, this needs dealing with, and dealing with now? This could have been sorted years ago. Why do 174 patients have to go through hell just to get answers about this, what's happened? It's scandalous, and that needs to be dealt with, as well as this public inquiry on why it takes so long. That's my rant for this show. Again, I'd like to thank Jules for coming on, for discussing what's happened. We will do another program maybe I think during the inquiry and see how it's going. And I think a third one, a follow-up after the inquiry as well. So we'll keep you well informed of what's happening. So thank you very much, Jules.
Can I just thank you, Mark, for supporting us, and again having me on your spaces, and again obviously for your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And what I'll say is good night, and
good night.
See you next time.
Absolutely.